I've had the privilege of knowing Jack Dorgan for perhaps getting on close to 30 years, but neither of us have aged a day, and he got all the hair. But Jack Dorgan got active on the northwest side of the city of Chicago at a time when people like Ronald Reagan was winning 1 out of every 3 precincts in the city of Chicago. President Reagan, the forerunner to that kind of success was Mike's dad, Roger McAuliffe, on the northwest side of the city of Chicago, who took out a message of a very viable and a very principled alternative. And there were folks in those neighborhoods, and indeed, over the course of President Reagan's career, there were folks in every neighborhood of the city of Chicago who voted for Republicans who were presenting a viable alternative. All of that was internalized by our speaker when he was working for Governor Thompson and then for Governor Edgar in his many acts of public service and philanthropy. And that's why I think when the Illinois State Central Committee needed to find a new chairman, it really was one of the quickest decisions they ever made. They looked among their own and they said, let's go with Jack Dorgan. And that's why we today welcome you and say, let's go to Jack Dorgan. Give him a welcome. Right here.
I think after that introduction, I really don't need to give my speech. But I want to thank all of you for being here today, and a lot of my friends and family and people from both sides of the aisle and representing all different kinds of industries and walks of life. I want to tell you a little bit about myself, my background, and how I became the chairman. And of course, I'm Irish, so I'm going to intertwine a few stories in here to lighten it up a little bit. As Chris said, I was born on the northwest side, Irish Catholic family, BVM, Christian brother, Jesuit educated, so you know I'm conflicted. My father was not in politics. My father worked at Western Electric in Cicero for 37 years. My father's father was a streetcar driver, so I guess he was a government employee, and he was also one of the union stewards, but sadly he died when my dad was 4 years old. My mother was a homemaker, but my mother was church lady. My mother did everything possible at St. Ferdinand's Church. She was head of the ladies of St. Anne and counted the money on the day after Mass, Sunday Mass, and Holy Day of Obligation. So I think I got a lot of my community service from my mom, and she was a great lady. My grandfather, who died when I was 4 years old, was a Chicago police sergeant. And very interesting story because he, way back when my mom was 5 years old, my grandfather apparently, and I heard the story secondhand, my grandfather apparently backed the wrong mayoral candidate in the city of Chicago. He lost his job. My mother moved back, and the family moved back to Ireland, so for about 3 years, from age 5 to 8, my mom lived back home at the ranch in Newmarket, County Cork, back in Ireland. And ironically, so I think it was kind of the first Shackman decree, but my grandfather got reinstated. They came back here, and obviously, a few decades later, I came along. But very proud of my family. Family is very important to me. My 2 brothers, both I'm the youngest in the family. My mom used to call me the baby, but we stopped that early on. But my 2 brothers, both Chicago policemen, they're both retired. My 2 sisters, very active. One is still a Catholic school teacher today, and the other is a administrative assistant down here for a healthcare operation. I think I have a few cousins in the room, too. I was told at a family wedding a couple weeks back that a couple of my cousins were attending. So we've got a big Irish family. So thank you if you are here, and I'll see you in a little bit. 1986, I moved to Rosemont. I haven't looked back, haven't moved. I've got 3 girls, proud girls, age 6, 8, and 10, and thus the reason I have a horrible cold today. So I apologize if I sound a little nasally, but bear with me. But I enjoy my family very, very much, and obviously this job doesn't allow me the amount of time that I want to have with them, but we do spend quality time when we're there. My career, as I talked about. I started out, and Chris talked a little bit on it, I was very lucky. My senior year at Loyola, I was offered well, actually I applied for the internship because I promised my dad I would graduate in 4 years, and I apparently wasn't real good at math, so I needed to take 27 hours my last semester at Loyola. It wasn't easy. But you know, when you're a senior, you start to figure things out. But anyways, so I applied for this internship, and I gave 3 choices. And at the time, I was working my way through college as an instructor in Chicago Park District. I was actually a Chicago Park District employee, and a job I enjoyed very much, working with kids. And so I said, well, I'd go work at the Park District, or I'd go work for the Democratic aldermen, and I didn't have a third choice. And my brothers were policemen, and Roger was a policeman. And my brothers, I was talking to my brothers about it, they said, well, put down Roger. So like I said, I probably wasn't supposed to be in the program. Well, the director of the internship, Dr. Jay Williams, who was from Loyola, and he's been on a number of programs, great guy, really great guy, I'd love to connect with him at some point, said, you know what, you've pestered me so much that I'm going to allow you to do this, but you're only going to do it because I want you to go work for the only Republican from the city of Chicago. Well, I stand here today and I really haven't looked back, although I do have to admit that I have a lot of Democratic friends, so please don't hold that against me, and I'm sure the bloggers will be going crazy in a little bit. But that was the start of my career. I spent a lot of time in a number of different positions. I kind of had a 2-3 year plan in my head that I would move around a little bit, and I was a staffer working at the House of Representatives, my first job. I was a revenue agent for the Department of Revenue for the state for a period of time. I was a technical advisor at IDOT, and also worked for then Secretary Greg Bays, and I know some of his people are here today. Greg's the president of the Illinois Manufacturers Association today. I went on to be the assistant director of personnel in the governor's office. A few people who I got jobs for are in this room also. And ironically, I can say that because back then, I was the last of the personnel officers before the Rutan decision. For those of you that are involved in government, I think you understand what that meant. I was 26 and I was able to hire a lot of people. So anyways, but I think that was good, and that's a whole discussion for another time, because I could probably write a book on it, but I don't know if that would fall under the RICO provision. So hopefully it wouldn't. I know my press people just went, oh, he didn't say that. So anyways, I left state government in 1987. I became a partner in a lobbying firm. Some of my clients are here today. Thank you for helping support me and my family, because my wife likes to spend. But my partner is a gentleman by the name of Jim McPike. It's him and I in the firm. He's technically the Democrat. I am obviously the Republican in the firm. And we have a pretty successful practice based on our credibility and our history of being honest and fair and you know, working with people and not asking people to do the wrong thing that would be bad for them. But I also have another job that I'm rather proud of, and I'm a trustee in a small little town that you probably never heard of, Rosemont. Nobody's ever heard of Rosemont. And ironically, a real cute story about Rosemont. And from what I understand, it was probably one of the better attended, and I was here, but one of the more informational talks was way back when there was this whole casino controversy going on. And I obviously was very close with the late mayor, who was the mayor for I'm getting in trouble, 54 years? Close enough. 54 years as the mayor. Wonderful, wonderful guy. Taught me a lot about the business. But we were going through this all, and we were competing with a number of big interests, and there was obviously a lot of money on the table, and you know, people were saying that they were right and they were wrong, and you know, a lot of media coverage, and a lot of people not telling the truth. Go figure. So I was with Jay one day at a Cubs game, although I'm a Sox fan. I was with Jay one day, and we were just standing there talking. I said, Jay, would you be willing to have Mayor Stevens come talk to the City Club? And he just looked at me and said, I would love that. Well, now all of his advisors and the media people around him, a number of people say, oh, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. And I told him, I said, listen, you've got to do it. You've got a remarkable story to tell about a village that you took from a waste dump and built it into this major convention and tourism and business mecca where privately held companies, the two top in the state, are located. You got to tell the story. So I went out and did it, and I remember, I think, when I talked to you when we were leaving there, the one thing you said to me, he goes, it was remarkable. Nobody got up and walked out, and everybody just was in stone silence listening, because it was such a fascinating story about politics and about municipal development and about his vision for this wonderful little town. And he talked a little bit about the casino, but on the casino issue, I want to personally, if anybody's here from Neil Bloom's operation, I want to personally thank them. Because the best thing that happened was when that casino went to Des Plaines, because we have built, the village of Rosemont has built an entertainment district that is thriving to this day, that is bringing more money to the state than any other entity that would have been placed there, and the casino's right across the street from Rosemont. So obviously everything that those folks said about it, it couldn't be a bad place. But so that's a little picture on my professional career, my political career, and I used to, when I would give speeches, I would get up there and joke and say, you know, I'm not the product of a nationwide search. So I've worked very hard at politics. I've enjoyed politics. As I said, I cut my teeth with Michael McAuliffe's dad, Roger McAuliffe, who's a great, highly skilled politician who understood what people needed and people wanted. And you know, I always used to joke, and I'm not being disrespectful, he wasn't the guy that was going to rewrite the school aid formula. But I tell you what, he knew what you cared about and what you cared about and what you cared about. And that was the most important thing. And that was what made him successful over and over and over. And obviously what his son has learned and made him successful today. A great election I was in. My first election was in 1982. It was a result of, here's kind of another cute story. Pat Quinn, for those of you that remember in the 80s, Pat Quinn did the cutback amendment. They reduced the size of the legislature. Go figure. Pat Quinn wanted to make government smaller. So they reduced the size of the legislature and took away multi-member districts. At those times when you had a Democrat solid district, you were always guaranteed one Republican. And obviously in a solid Republican district, you were guaranteed one Democrat. So the consolidation of power that we see today in the offices of the leaders would not be the same it is today. And I think a lot of the problems we have today would not be there was it not for Pat Quinn and his attempt to make government smaller. So when you see Pat Quinn, make sure you thank him for that. So the 1982 election was the first of the single-member districts, and Roger being the only Republican from the city of Chicago, never going to win, you're going to get killed, you're going to get blown out of the water. You know, we're running against a guy by the name of Roman Kozinski. And Roman was also an incumbent state representative. He was a jeweler, a local, you know, big powerhouse in the community. He was Polish. It was a heavily Polish district. Well, we beat him by 604 votes. And that probably was one of the greatest days of my political career. And it was the one that definitely gave me the bug and told me that politics can not only be a fun sport, but it's something good, and you walk up and you know people, and you engage with people, and you talk about issues that people care about, and hopefully at the end of the day you win, because there's nothing worse than losing an election, and I've had a few of those too. But, and as I said, 1982 was my first big election. 1984, I ran the Reagan campaign in the city of Chicago, which was a fun operation. Primarily, that was due to the fact that I worked for the only Republican in the city of Chicago that was elected. But it was a great operation. We won the northwest, southwest sides of the city. We won a couple wards on the lakefront, and we came close in a lot of other areas. And I think that was the last time, and that's something I look at as a model for, you know, hopefully way back when we can get there. 1986, I went to work for Governor Jim Thompson. I was one of the field directors on his campaign. We spent a year on the campaign staff. I worked with a number of good people, you know, that understood politics and how it worked. And it was the year that I moved to Rosemont. Ironically, our offices were located in Rosemont. And one day, Mayor Stevens walked in and said, "Does anybody need an apartment?" And of course, I was on the road all the time, and it was half of what I was paying, so I took the apartment, and he had me on the hook ever since then. Excuse me one second. So I went into the governor's office with the intent, when Governor Thompson, after he won the election in 1986, and I went into the office, and the governor said, "Well, what do you want to do? You know, your skills, you're great. You like people. You're good. I want you to be part of my team. You know, what would you like to do?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to go into your personnel office." And actually, the guy that I replaced is sitting right over there, my good friend Jay D'Alessandro. But I said I wanted to go in there with the goal of making sure that if you run, and I'm hoping you run in 4 years, that this operation will be where it needs to be to get you where you need to be, and obviously reelected. Not only did I deal with all of the, you know, ward and township committeeman, but I dealt with organized labor, I dealt with business groups, I dealt with church groups, all over. And actually Kim McCullough, who worked for me way back when she was 18, worked with me in the governor's office, and we did a good job. We really did a lot. And so that's a whole other story, as I mentioned too, that the whole Rutan decision and taking political hiring out of government, I don't think political hiring is always bad. Because when you have political hires, you have people who understand that they're accountable to someone, and they're not just going to sit at a desk and not do a lot of good things for the people. So that's for another story. Moving on to 1990, when Governor Thompson broke the news to me and a number of others, basically called us up and said, "Hey, guess what? I'm not running." Okay, time to look for a job. I thought I was going to go to work on the Edgar campaign and work for Governor Secretary Edgar in his run for governor. And I got a call one day and said, "Secretary Edgar wants to see you." I'm like, okay. So I go in and he sits down and he says, "Well, Jack, I really want you to work for me, but I need a good operation run in Cook County." So there was a gentleman by the name of Aldo DeAngelis, God rest his soul, who was a state senator from the south suburbs, a remarkable guy, a really good guy, a fantastic cook, fun to be around, loved people, loved campaigning. He ran for the county board presidency. There were 4 Democrats running, and there was some scenarios that possibly might have created something for us to win. But like I said, most importantly, Governor Edgar in the statewide ticket wanted to make sure that the showing in Cook County was where it should be, and the processes and the people and the campaign team was in place that would benefit his operation too. So it was dual fold. Actually, that's how I met Paul Green. I think Paul had a job back then. No, you weren't working then either. See, you fooled me again. But I met Paul in 1990 running Aldo's campaign. He was a very dear friend, and I met a lot of good people. I've worked on dozens, if not 50, 60, 70 legislative campaigns. I understand it. I understand the mechanics of politics. I understand the mechanics of talking to people and getting them to hopefully persuade them to vote your way. I have been so excited. I have seen so many of my very close personal friends who I consider family elected to office. Ironically, I'm so old, some of them are now retired. Alderman Brian Doherty, my cohort, and Brian, you cannot ask any questions because I will not answer them, was the only Republican alderman from the city of Chicago from the 41st Ward for 20 years. My dear friend Pete Silvestri, Cook County Commissioner and former mayor of Elmwood Park. Skip Saviano, I don't know where Skip's here. I think I might know where he's at. Okay, he's not here. But Skip, I was involved in his campaign in 1992 when Speaker Madigan made him the #1 target, and we won pretty handily. And obviously my dear friend Mayor Brad Stevens, who in his last election got 92% of the vote. Those other 8% moved. Since moved, relocated. Anyways, my path to the chairmanship was somewhat unique. I sat on the State Central Committee for a number of years, over 10 years, and we were having some turmoil. It was somewhat of a tumultuous time, not necessarily for the reasons that people thought that was going on. Back in April, I was actually on the phone. I'm going to tell this story with my dear friend and my fellow State Central Committee member, Roger Clare, the mayor of Bolingbrook. And there was a special call. A faction of the State Central Committee was trying to call for an emergency meeting, and lo and behold, I was the deciding vote. I wasn't comfortable for a multiple list of reasons, and I got Roger on the phone, and Roger was talking with me and giving me clear guidance, and I mean that sincerely. And I said, Roger, you know what? I was driving back from Springfield, so I was in my pickup truck. I got a pickup truck. I know. Change of life. But I was in my pickup truck driving back from Springfield, and Roger, I said, well, let's get Pat on the phone. We talked about a couple of things. The call really didn't go all that well. But in the interim, I had gotten a call from Senator Kirk and a couple of our congressmen saying, what are you going to do? And I had promised everybody on both sides, I said by 3 o'clock that day, I would make my decision. And I really was conflicted because there were bad optics, but there was also bad management and a lot of different things going on that the situation, it had to be rectified. So Roger, in his skillful ways, convinced me that we should not have the meeting, and I decided not to have the meeting. Well, hang up with Roger. About 5 minutes later, I get a friendly call from one of my media consultants and says, have you seen the Sun-Times? I said, no, I'm in my car driving back from Springfield. You may want to pull over and read it. I'm like, oh, great. So, obviously I've got my AT&T iPad, and I pull over at the 100-mile mark, which is the rest stop right there, and I fire it up. See? Do you want me to get that? I didn't know you knew how to answer a phone. Good, okay. Anyways, talk to your wife. But, so I pulled over, I fired it up, and Pat Brady had said into the Sun-Times that I was doing Speaker Madigan's bidding on the Republican State Central Committee. I was doing Speaker Madigan's bidding on the Republican State Central Committee. And I'm looking at it, and all of a sudden a little light goes on in my head. Brian doesn't know how to operate a phone either. That's one of the reasons why he left the city council. He was very frustrated. So I looked at it, and I'm staring at the screen and going, well, wait a sec. Maybe Speaker Madigan wants Brady to stay. So anyways, that was a joke for those of you. Okay. So I made the call. I made the decision. I said, we're not going to have the meeting. We ended up having a meeting, and every once in a while, whether you like people or don't like people, change is required. I remember telling people, and I used the analogy that, hey, my beloved White Sox even got rid of Ozzie Guillen at one point. At some time the coach has got to go, things aren't working right. And like I said, it wasn't for any of the social reasons that people were concerned about. It was really just a management issue, and time had come, and sometimes people have to move on and do different things in their life. So all that being said, we finally get to the meeting, and we have the meeting on June 1st, and Judgment Day is there, and sure enough, I win. Everyone who had been interested in the spot, a number of them I had talked to, some of them I didn't care to talk to, but a number of them I had talked to were very gracious for about an hour. And, the internet bloggers. Internet is just a really, really remarkable tool. I vision some of these folks, there are good internet bloggers too, let me say that first and foremost. But I envision some of these folks who just have nothing better to do. It's sit at their computer with tinfoil on their head and just say bad things about anybody that comes to mind. That is one regulation that I would like to see the state step up and do, but I don't think we could ever get there. So it's just one of those things, and I guess it comes with the territory. So anyways, I get elected, and I'm excited, and I'm still excited to this day. And June 3rd, first day, walk in, and the place looks like a frat house on the last day of college. Files all in disarray, 10-year-old computers, hard drives gone. I mean, it was just really a bad situation. Broke, really broke. I mean, we're getting better, and we're raising money as we speak, but it was just one of those situations where the operation obviously needed change and needed some new leadership. But I'm here today to tell you that we are alive, we are well, we have new staff. Jamie Odom is here. Jamie's my executive director. I think she's here. She's probably got her head down right now. Okay. Oh, all the way in the back. She's taking copious notes. But Jamie's our executive director. She is full-time. We've got a media person starting tomorrow, a communications director. We have a victory director that has just started a week ago that is running a number of the programs that are RNC-based. And we're excited. We're raising money. Obviously, you can never raise enough money in politics, but we are raising money, and I'm here to tell you that the state party is alive, well, and being very, very active as we speak. So a little bit about my vision and my bad cold. Thank you. My vision for the Illinois GOP and essentially politics in general. This is where I get to preach a little bit. I really would like to see the name calling stop. I think that doesn't help anybody. It's inherent in the beast, but I would like to see the name calling stop. When we sit there and we say the right-wing Tea Party Republicans versus the liberal left Nancy Pelosi, I don't think that really benefits anybody other than just paints a picture in people's head, which of course is what political operatives want you to do, but I just don't think that helps. And I believe that turns off a whole bunch of voters who are in the middle, you know, that aren't hardcore Republicans, that aren't hardcore Democrats. And really, those numbers aren't that much different between those two groups. So what does that mean? That means there's a whole big group, you know, a couple million voters that are in the middle that either don't vote or don't want to vote or don't like, or a multitude of reasons why they don't get involved. Or they sit and they wait and they look and they listen to hear about the right-wing Tea Party Republicans. So, you know, it's one of those things that the name calling I just don't think ever is good, but I don't know how we get away from it, but I am going to do my best to try and make sure that you can cut through some of the clutter and understand what these people are about. You know, the other thing is getting voters to focus on the issues that matter. I mean, that sounds very profound, but it's really a sad statement about politics in general and politics here in Illinois. You know, it was interesting, and I was showing Paul earlier Tuesday night. I was watching ABC because I have a very exciting life, and I was home. I was in bed at 10 o'clock and watching ABC. And Reverend Jackson came on the TV. He was holding a press conference. He was with a number of other African-American legislators, and Bob Fioretti and a couple other folks that were up there. And he said something really that I think is potentially going to be a big imprint on this 2014 cycle, is that he's creating a 2014 campaign coalition. Well, and I actually brought the clip with me, and of that coalition, though, the thing that bothers me and what I want to see, and my job is to challenge people, and not challenge in a bad way, but challenge people to think and help and hopefully see our point of view. But he said he's going to bring this 2014 coalition together of elected officials, clergy, and labor leaders. So anyways, what's missing in that equation of those three groups? There's no employers. They have not thought about sitting down and meeting with business and saying, what can we do to bring businesses here? You know, you look at the south side of Chicago, the west side of Chicago, you look at areas all across suburban Cook County, Metro East, all different parts of the state, and you've got vacant factories. You've got, you know, lots, empty lots. I mean, the ability to bring employers to the table, to get business in the table and have a fruitful discussion is what needs to be done. And that's something that I think the Republicans strongly stand for, and I know will be a very strong part of our campaign speeches and apparatus. You know, a good job solves a whole bunch of social issues. You know, a good job does a lot of things for a lot of families. And when we talk about these political equations like Reverend Jackson is, and he says nothing about employers, about the business community, that's just wrong. And we need to, and I'm going to make sure that he understands that, and I'm guessing probably by the end of the day he will understand that I said that. But I think that's very important. You know, I've got a lot of friends on all different sides, as I said, of both the Republican and Democrat and all different factions and walks of life. When you're in politics this long, you know, I've always been very proud that I make friends. I know I have a few enemies, but I think I have more friends than enemies, and I think that's important. But I think we really need to make sure that the focus of the discussion takes a business tint to it, and make sure that the voters of Illinois understand that you know, we have to have a business-friendly state to survive. We can't just keep on creating these programs and doing all these things that just goes back to the taxpayer and says pay more, pay more, pay more. I mean, we've got to have a system that gets better. As I said, and you know, the other thing that I think is critical is that we've got to force a discussion on a solid two-party system in this state. You know, but at the same time, the GOP and the GOP candidates have to be viable and a viable alternative. You know, we've had over a decade of one-party control in this state, and I think that's wrong. I think, you know, you can't have balance. You can't have the types of checks and balances that are needed in government without the ability of a two-party system and people from two different factions sitting down and two different political ideologies sitting down and talking and having a good discussion. Because then and only then do I think that you get good public policy. So that's going to be obviously a crux of what we do is forcing that discussion about a two-party system. We can't forget about the core electoral functions, registering, identifying, and getting out the vote. I mean, that is critical to any campaign. That's politics 101. It's the basics. Sometimes I find in campaigns that people forget those simple things, but it is something that we will look and focus on and be very aggressive at, because I remember old school that's how you win elections. But at the same time, we have to embrace the new technologies, embrace new strategies, get much better at social media. The Republican National Committee, Chairman Reince Priebus, a really, really good guy, considering he is from Kenosha, Wisconsin. But he is a good guy and just a solid leader. And I'm really, really excited. He does tell me that I'm one of the few chairmen that call him a lot, which I don't know whether to take that as good or bad. But we talk, and he's just been not only an inspiration, but he's putting his money where his mouth is. He was one of the first calls when I was first elected back in June, and I said, Chairman, it's an honor. I said, I'm a pretty straightforward guy. I don't like to dance a lot. I want to get to the point. I said, I've been in politics for over 30 years. I've seen a lot of RNC people come and go. I've seen a lot of RNC people come in and really not, in my eyes, contribute to what was in the best interest of the candidates or helping those candidates get elected. And he said, no, Jack, that's all changing. And he's committed to acting early. He's committed to helping us in a lot of different forms and facets of the campaign. And I'm excited about that. And I'm even more excited that we beat his Green Bay Packers. But then again, it was our second string against his. So he reminded me that it was their second string quarterback. So anyways, but he's been a great guy. He's fully engaged in Illinois. We're co-partnered on the processes that need to be in place, and we're really excited about that. Living by O'Hare has a great benefit, and I told Chairman Priebus this because they're all coming through that wonderful little hub system called O'Hare Airport, and they're always got a little downtime there. I said, I'll come pick you up, I'll come meet you, I'll do whatever you need if you've got a little bit of layover. And I've been able to not only sit with Chairman Priebus, but a number of the other senior RNC people and get some face-to-face time, because it's a lot easier to tell you on the phone no than it is face-to-face. And they all sincerely have been first class and very forthcoming and are going to be critical to our 2014 operation. We learned a lot from the Obama technology team. We are looking to not only mirror that and study that, and we have, but also making it better. And we will leave no electoral battleground untouched. We will be active in the African American community. We'll be active in the Latino community, in the city of Chicago, in suburban Cook County, Metro East. We'll battle to educate voters all across the state. And I think we do have a message that should, and it somewhat blows my mind that we are not capable of resonating with some of these non-traditional Republican voting groups or Democratic groups to get them to vote Republican. We just haven't done a good job, and part of that is we show up 30 days before the election and say, hey, I want your vote. Well, that doesn't work. You've got to be there early. You've got to talk early. You've got to have a message that resonates. And that's the other thing that somewhat excited me, with a little bit of skepticism about what Reverend Jackson wants to do. But I think that's important that the dialogue is starting now. So we will not take any battleground for granted, and we will be active everywhere there. It's interesting when you look at some of the numbers, and one of my goals is to increase the turnout, not only in the Republican primary, but also get the numbers up and get more people voting in the general election. So, roughly in 2010, we had about 768,000 Republican primary votes. I'm planning on getting that number up, and that's going to be something that I'm going to challenge a whole bunch of people, and a lot of you in this room here, my fellow fellow Republican elected officials and cohorts that we get those primary numbers up. It's critical, and I really think we do, and I think people are there, and I think the climate is ripe for us to do that. We've got a great ticket from the top to the bottom. We've got some fresh faces. We've got some experienced leaders, but I think we've got a ticket that'll be second to none. And once we clear through the clutter on March 18th, that we'll be ready and raring to go, and hopefully not too damaged as sometimes we have done in the past from primary battles. And just to close up real quick, someone from Illinois once promised hope and change. Someone promised hope and change. Oh, Roebling got it. Well, I mean, hope for a good job, hope for better schools, hope for quality health care and safe streets for our families just hasn't happened. We have to be, as Republicans, the viable alternative. We have to have a message that says, you know what, this didn't work. And now here we are. And you know what, we may not as Republicans have all the solutions, but I know we can do better. And our candidates have to show that, and our candidates have to communicate that, across the board. So I don't stand here today promising that Republicans have all the answers, but I do think that after over a decade of one-party control, that we are a viable alternative, and that we need to, show the people all across this state that our candidates are electable and, good people with good messages. Can't do that without a lot of your help. A lot of people in this room I know get active and do things, but we need more of you. We need you to talk about what's going on in this state at your Thanksgiving dinners and at Christmas. And we need you to, just talk about the issues. And we feel when we're talking about the issues that we win hand over. So thank you. And now the funnest part, the question and answer.
Take a nice pull off of that. Thank you very much, Jack Dorgan. Thank you. So on your tables, you've got these question forms. Please fill them out and hand them off to the City Club staffers. We want to also, terrific. No, I'm just trying to. It's the legibility. It's the key issue of legibility. All right. All right, let's go. Jack, here is a question from Mitch Matson of CBS Outdoor, who is a member of the City Club. What is your opinion of the 4 current legislative leaders?
Well, I can't tell you how much I love Christine Radogno enough. We'll start with Leader Radogno. Great spokesperson. Wonderful advocate for the party, not afraid to tell people when she thinks they're wrong, and a really solid leader. I'm very proud to be partnered with her. Jim Durkin, Jimmy and I go way, way back. I helped run his first campaign when he ran for community college trustee. Jimmy was a roommate of mine at one time, and just a very close personal friend, along with the 22 other Durkin brothers. A couple of them are here. And, just love really dearly. I think his background of being a prosecutor and, his background as a legislator and a statewide candidate, fits him really well for the job. Speaker Madigan, not a lot of people around him. Very loyal, fiercely loyal, which I actually do respect. I understand that, and I think loyalty is an incredible trait that a lot of people have lost. But obviously rules with an iron fist. And his ability to not only be the speaker and be the state party chairman, brings him tremendous benefits that, we're working to get. John Cullerton, interesting guy. I was kind of sad when he became the Senate president because I thought no one did an imitation of Emil Jones better than him. And I told him that now you can't do that anymore because you have to be politically correct. So John's good. Obviously he's the opposition, and we need to elect more Republicans to Chris's caucus, and that's critical. But he's willing to listen on business issues sometimes, not enough, but sometimes. Thank you.
Mark Weiermiller, also a member of the City Club. With the Obama healthcare debacle, how can we parlay that to get rid of Durbin, Quinn, Madigan, etc.? Question mark.
Wow. I'm not much of a policy wonk, but I know enough to kind of muddle through. And I really, when I took over the state party, I said, I'm more of an operations person. I want to make sure that this, this boat rows and goes down the river the way it's supposed to. Obamacare, I think, is typical. I mean, Charles Thomas, and I've used the line a couple of times, a couple weeks back on This Week in Review. On my Fridays at 7 o'clock, I'm usually watching This Week in Review at the House. So said he had a very profound statement, and he said, Democrats are great at politics, but they're rotten at governing. And I think the Obamacare debacle has proven that. I think it's well-intentioned to give health care to all, but when you start making commitments and making promises and then you can't fulfill them, I think that's problematic. You see the president's numbers coming way down. His credibility is incredibly damaged by this, and I think it feeds to the opportunity that the Republicans have in this cycle. And I think the failure of Obamacare, as much as, and he was on the radio, did a press announcement at 11 this morning, which I was listening to, on the way down, and of course he was blaming a whole bunch of other people. He did once in a while say he was sorry, but essentially it was political rhetoric blaming other people. I think will really help the Republicans across the country.
Okay, and Carlos Ponce, a related question. Will the Republicans win the governorship in 2014, and if so, how?
More votes. I do have a sense of humor, so I try to keep it. We have to have good candidates who have good messages who translate. I think we've got great candidates running for governor. I know Senator Dillard is here, and they all, any one of them would make a great governor. I said way back when, I wish I could put them all in a blender and just have one, but that's the nature of the beast, and it's not going to happen. I think we win by talking about the things that are important to families, and I know that sounds like political rhetoric, but we win by talking about getting the economy moving again in the state, by being a business-friendly state. I've met with Governor Pence from Indiana, and I've met with Governor Walker from Wisconsin, and and they're all here trying to steal jobs from Illinois. Well, that's kind of silly. We need to defend our territory and defend our state, but we can't do that when we don't have a climate here that says welcome to businesses and welcome to people who want to create jobs. So I think that at the end of the day, hopefully will be the message.
Michael Casa, Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation, a member of the City Club, asks, as the new chairman of the Illinois Republican Party, how do you bring together the conservative and moderate wings of the party?
And the Palestinians and the Jews. I'm working at it. It is difficult, but I think communication is key. I am sitting down with all of those who are essentially stakeholders of the Republican Party. Visions vary, but as I've said, that they need to pay attention and they need to get in the boat and they need to row in the same direction. Now, I know that's hard. People who believe in one single issue and will fall on the sword and lose an election because of one single issue, I don't think are good political thinkers. I really don't. I respect what they say. I respect what everyone says. But because someone's different or means something or comes from a different part of town and they want to be a Republican, the only thing I can say to them is welcome. But you've got to talk to them. You've got to sit with them. You've got to make sure that they understand that you're listening. And, sometimes you got to have a little tough love. And I'm not afraid to do that. I'm from Chicago. We like to mix it up a little bit.
Speaking of Chicago, Michael Mackey of Mesro Financial has got a very important question. Do you support a 2016 Republican National Convention in Chicago? And could you please detail the conversations you've had with Rahm about that?
I think Rahm was getting ready for that polar bear plunge. He hasn't called me yet. Interesting dynamic. I've had some preliminary conversations, nothing on an official basis. I was aware that there was some discussion by some Republican operatives about Chicago. Obviously, Chicago, as is Rosemont, is a great place to have a convention, a trade show, very hospitable. I think the dynamics of the 16 convention, which the RFP will be out, I believe, November 15th or 16th, so this next couple days. We'll probably talk about an earlier convention, possibly June. I think that may bring some challenges. And I'm not quite sure that 2016, obviously Senator Kirk will be up. There are a lot of different political dynamics that need to be looked at. And nothing against, is anybody here from Choose Chicago? Okay. Well, no one from the city or Choose Chicago has officially asked the state party or myself, and I have a vote. So I think if they are interested in that, they need to do that. Obviously, it would bring money to the city and the state and the region, which we're all about. Ram can be probably an interesting person to deal with. I thought about it. Of course, I didn't have a little bit of knowledge of that people were going to do it, and then of course the Sun-Times front page with Rahm Emanuel saying he's going after the Republican convention made my Saturday very interesting because I spent most of the day doing press calls because of that. But you know, if he's serious, he's got to come to us and he's got to talk about it, because at the end of the day, I got to vote and he doesn't. So don't know. Possible.
Watch this space. But ladies and gentlemen, we've been watching, and do we enjoy it? Do we like what we saw?